Welcome to another edition of the Packaging Europe podcast. I'm Tim Sykes, and today we're returning to the important topic of reuse. As you know, this is a strategic goal for packaging in a circular economy, and a question that Packaging Europe has been exploring from many different perspectives, from systems change to innovation to the economic conditions for return-based systems. In this podcast, we're going to be assessing the topic of reuse from a very practical point of view, thinking about the levers available to accelerate the scale up of reuse. And we're going to explore this topic through the lens of insights from Avery Dennison. And that's a company that occupies quite a unique vantage point as a global supplier that has acquired expertise around reusable packaging through adaptations to market requirements. This is both via engineering labeling systems that are suitable for reusable containers and its long-lasting experience in developing RFID-enabled digital packaging solutions and circular systems. And with that, I'm delighted to welcome an old friend of Packaging Europe, Avery Dennison's Noam Assael, who is Director of Business Ventures for the Worldwide Materials Group. Hi, Noam. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, team. It's nice to be here with you. Hi to all of the listeners as well.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. And first of all, I just wanted to establish why it's important to talk about this topic and why now. What, in your view, is driving reuse, and why is it such an urgent item on our agenda in the beginning of the new year 2026?
So I think that there are several elements when we look why reuse is so important. First of all, we know and we see that we're trying to collect as much as we can single-use items, but we are not able to do it 100%. So reuse is another mean or another way, in addition to collection of single-use items, to reduce waste and to be more sustainable. And in addition to that, we see two big trends that are pushing reuse forward. One is legislation. We've seen it in Europe with the PPWR that is mandating reuse in some of the segments. And also, we're seeing a lot of national legislation, like in France or in other countries, that is pushing reuse. In addition to the legislation, we know also that consumers are very keen about reuse and are expecting from brands and retailers to offer that possibility.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, that definitely chimes with how we see this. And in the light of this urgency, I'm hoping that we can spend this podcast sharing some of the key learnings that Avery Dennison has acquired from its various activities and pilots, and trying to shine some light on what can be done to scale up application of reuse, which has been something we've been talking about for several years now, but we're still seeing not a huge amount of activity in terms of the wide volumes of the market. Um, I'd like to begin by exploring some of the wider conditions that we need to make um, reuse happen at scale. Um, what do you see as the key opportunities and requirements there, Noam?
So I think that if I have to look at three elements that are important, one is actually planning the scaling. The second one is collaboration, and the third one is standardization. Maybe let's deep dive a little bit into each of these elements. We know that making a reuse system at scale is complex. And one of the challenges that we've seen that a lot of companies and a lot of organizations have done a pilot, and once they want to scale up, it doesn't work. So you have to plan from day one actually how the pilot would look at scale. How do you make it economical at scale? This is a key requirement to make it happen. The second element is to look at the part of collaboration. not one organization is involved in a reuse solution. You have a washing facility and you have an operator and you have a vessel producers and you have a data element and a hardware element and consumer engagement. And there's a lot of partners that have to join together and, like maybe an orchestra, have to play jointly together so the pilot will be or the project will be successful. And the last element is really standardization and harmonization. Once we want to make it scalable and we want it really, really to work, we have to be able to get vessels from other systems. We have to be able to know where the vessel is in a way that all of the players that are working on the system are actually coordinated and get the same data. We've seen initiatives like that, like the PR3
Mm.
initiative, to create a standard. What are the requirements from a washing facility? What is the data structure at the return point? What are the requirements of the vessel? This will help actually to reduce costs and to make reuse more scalable.
Okay, thank you. And do you see across those three pillars that you've described particular pressure points where you're not seeing enough, or where you would like to see specific kind of adjustments or greater commitment from all of the stakeholders?
I think that when we look at the market, when projects start, people think or companies think about um, there's no need for digitalization. We can count the items, and quite rapidly they find out that actually they lose track of things.
Mm.
So if it's one area that needs a lot of attention, is actually the data part, that the part that helps us to understand where things reside, how much we have, where it is, how much vessels are clean, how much were returned. That data helps to understand what's going on and to make the system more efficient. And again, using tools like QR codes, RFIDs, these elements help to achieve and to collect the data.
Okay, thank you. So another key requirement in my view for scaling up reuse is ensuring that it actually works as a business model and that it's profitable. Um, what have been Avery Dennison's insights in terms of how you can drive profitability and optimize it when trying to implement reuse?
I think that there are a few elements. The first element is actually to focus on return rates.
Mm.
Is to think when we do the planning and we prepare the reuse system, is how do we make sure that we get back the vessels? Imagine, team, that we have you have a set of assets that you invest a lot in them. It's the cups, it's the bottles, and so on, and you don't get them back. So return rates, that's the most important index I would focus on. The second element that I would look into is the design of the packaging. We see many times companies which over design, and then the cost of the packaging is very expensive. Think really how many cycles will the packaging will do, not how
Mm.
much you want it to do, but how many actually it will do. And we've seen that, for example, sometimes companies come and say, hey, we want that the packaging will last for 100 cycles. But actually, if the return rates will be 80% after 15 cycles, these packaging are gone. So if
Mm.
you over engineer them and they're very robust, maybe a less expensive, more simple packaging would work. And then, of course, from an economical point of view, the cost would be lower and the project would be more efficient.
And this
Uh,
this comes back to some of the points you were making with regard to those sort of preconditions of planning from the start, and really thinking through how it's going to work, and I guess collaboration as well in making sure that everyone is communicating to understand what their accurate expectations are of the return rates, etc.
Correct. Again, this is part of the coming back to that planning in advance. Correct. Another point that we've seen that companies, when they plan or when they execute, they give less attention. And I think that this is super important, is the part of automation. We've seen in pilots or in projects, for example, Unpackaged has done a pilot in the UK last year with Ocado and Aldi. And we've seen that one of the elements that increases the cost is the labor that is around the reuse packaging, especially on the reverse logistics.
Mm.
When the packaging comes back from the market and goes through the sorting and washing and so on, a lot of labor is involved in that. And actually, automating some of these processes will help reduce the cost. We've seen, for example, we did a study recently, which will be published in the next couple of weeks, that, for example, in the washing facility, just replacing a QR code with an RFID label, which allows actually for automated reading without scanning each vessel by itself, we can reduce the cost of or the amount of people that we need in the washing facility in up to 50%, which is tremendous when you look at the cost
Mm.
of a reuse system.
I've
Uh,
I would comment that I've been quite taken aback when visiting some reuse washing centres by the degree of manual labour that you see in these compared to packaging facilities, and I guess this is maybe a kind of chicken egg situation, isn't it? That when you're running it as a cottage industry before something has been scaled up and become more universally applied, then the investment in uh, automation is going to be perhaps prohibitive, but maybe you need that investment in order to be able to scale it up.
Correct. I agree to the chicken and the egg analogy. I think that you're 100% right, Tim. And maybe again, part of it is coming back. Maybe I sound like a broken record about the planning, but start from day one thinking, okay, how my operations would look at scale and
Mm.
what is required today as the minimum viable solution that will enable me to do the future investments when I scale up. So, what do I need to do in my the type of vessels that I use, the digital triggers that I choose, and so on from day one, that when I want to scale up, I don't have to restart from scratch. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a little bit of a way to solve this chicken and the egg
Mm.
problem.
Mm.
I think also that maybe as coming back to your question about how to optimize profitability, I think that one of the last things that is key, and maybe it fits with a trend these days, is actually the data and the digital traceability, the ability of me as an operator or me as a user to know where my assets are, to control the cost of how many new items I have to order, to know from which areas or in which products the return rates are low. That information actually that feeds into AI systems and logistics systems is crucial to be very efficient and lean.
Thanks, Noam. And you've just referred to return rates as a really important metric, and that's something where, of course, we rely on consumers to make the system work effectively. What are the insights that you and Avery Dennison have taken into how we need consumers to behave, and how can we mobilize them to be an effective stakeholder within the reusable system?
It's a very good question. I think that consumers are key or are crucial for a successful reuse system. And although they generally have a positive attitude towards reducing packaging and reuse, I think that not always it translates into a behavioral change. Reuse is naturally is less convenient than using something and throwing it away. You have maybe to clean it, you have to return it, you have to sometimes pay a deposit. And I think that a behavior change is required. I think that brands have a super important role in helping us changing the behavior back into a reuse state of mind.
Mm,
I think also that the other element, which is important when we talk to consumers and when we look at ourselves, is really how do we minimize the friction that is connected to reusable packaging? How do we make the taking or the buying of a reusable item very, very simple? How to return it in a easy way without needing to take a deposit or a credit in one place and get the deposit in another place? How do we maybe think of alternative systems for the return logistics that maybe come and pick up items at our homes? All of us today get at least once or twice, if not every day, a delivery at home. Maybe that company can pick up our reusable items. Again, thinking out of the box of how to make the friction minimal. And I think that the last element, team, would be maybe to address some of the concerns that some of the consumers might have. Is is this packaging safe to use? Is it clean? Is it durable? Does it protect my product as my single use? I think that these are the elements that I would focus on.
thank you. And I wonder if this also links back to a point that you made earlier about the importance of standardization. One of the things that it always strikes me when you're looking for consumer behavior change is that you need simplicity, as you say, and if there are multiple different systems, different kinds of behavior that are expected, then it's very hard for it can lead to confusion among consumers, and it also is maybe a barrier towards what I think is an important way of uh, affecting public behavioral change, which is kind of getting to a critical mass of people basically thinking this is what everyone does, and I'm going to conform to what everyone else does. And the less standardization you have, the slower the pathway towards that sense of this is the normal way of dealing with your empty packaging.
I agree. If I have to as a consumer think that on my personal care items I have to return them at the supermarket. My food elements, someone will come to pick them at home. For my beverage, I pay a deposit of 1 cent, but for the home care products, I don't pay a deposit. And so on and so forth. As much as as it's complex, you're completely right. We as consumers will not do reuse. So standardization, making things simple, also connecting to collaboration. If the
Yeah,
system
yeah,
works the same in all of the retailer store, in all of the brands, as much as is similar, it will make it more that it will make the adoption higher. You're 100% right.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's a very kind of low tech example that I still think several years later is very powerful, which was Coca-Cola in South America standardizing the bottles, the PET bottles across different brands. So going away from the different, Fanta and Coke and Sprite bottles, so that there was just a single standard bottle which could be applicable to reuse. And I think that kind of very simple but bold thinking is the kind of thing that we'd like to see more of. And if uh, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo
Mhm.
were to think, jointly, for example, then that would really be a game changer, wouldn't it?
I think you're 100% right. We're doing a pilot now, or a market test would be the right word, which would be very interesting. There is the Consumer Goods Forum, which is a meeting place for brands and retailers, is actually doing a market trial together with a company called Reposit
Mm,
in Canada, where 4 or 5 leading brands in the home and personal care are going to use to share the same vessel, similar to the idea that you mentioned in the beverage industry. And there will be some retailers which will sell it as well. And the idea is really to try to create kind of a standard packaging that has a decorative label that is replaced on every cycle. So one time P&G uses the bottle, the next time L'Oreal will use the same bottle, and it will have a digital identifier, an RFID label that helps to track, to count cycles, and to know where these assets are. So this is a very interesting project that is happening that will help us actually, the learnings will help us even more to scale up reuse systems in the future.
Well, that's a really great example that I think encapsulates all of the different elements that you've talked about. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that and report on the progress of that project. Thank you, Noam, so much for sharing those insights. I wonder if you have any final words of advice for the value chain in the year ahead with regard to this challenge of scaling up adoption of reusable formats.
So I think that if I have to summarize, a word that came up a lot is planning and thinking big and bold to make the systems really successful. And I enjoyed very, very much talking to you today, Tim, on this podcast.
Thank you, Noam, and I'm sure it won't be the final time we talk on the podcast, and definitely not the final time we talk about reuse. So yeah, thank you, Noam, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today, and thanks to you, the audience, for listening in. I just have a couple of final announcements in the admin section. The Packaging Sustainability Awards will be open for submissions once again this year from 20th of January, so please look out for that. And anyone doing important work in reuse or circular economy or reducing the carbon footprint of your packaging, please do engage with that. We like to try to create a snapshot of all of the important work that's going on around the world. And secondly, reusable packaging will be one of the major topics that we discuss this year at the Sustainable Packaging Summit, which is Europe's biggest packaging sustainability event, and taking place on the 10th to 12th of November in Utrecht in the Netherlands. We'll be back with another podcast soon, but for now, goodbye.